I didn't leave a note, I didn't pack a bag in a hurry, I didn't slam the door, I just vanished. And that silence broke her more than any words ever could. That's how it started. The moment I chose silence over confrontation, disappearance over begging. But to understand why I left without a sound, you need to hear what happened before. Because betrayal doesn't come crashing in like thunder. It seeps in slowly, like poison. Before I continue, pause for a second. If you've ever seen a story of betrayal that left you speechless, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me your story in the comments. Now, let's dive in. Her name was Anna. To everyone else, she was warmth wrapped in a smile. To me, she was home. We met in college, bonding over cheap coffee, midnight drives, and whispered dreams about a future together. She laughed at my worst jokes, swore she would never betray me, and every time she said, "You're my forever," I believed her. I built my life around that promise. Years together blurred into engagement. Families merged, friends toasted to us, and I thought I had beaten the odds. I thought I had found the kind of loyalty most people only dream about. But love, real or imagined, has a dangerous flaw. It blinds you. It makes you ignore the small things, like the way her phone was always face down on the counter, or how notifications from a private group chat would light up her screen with bursts of laughter that didn't sound like innocent fun. I told myself it was nothing. That trust meant not asking questions, that the woman I loved deserved the benefit of the doubt. But then came the night that changed everything. Her phone buzzed when she left it charging in the kitchen. And for the first time, curiosity wasn't temptation, it was survival. I looked. What I found wasn't a message. It was a video. Grainy, shaky, poorly lit, but clear enough to kill the man I used to be. Anna at her own Bachelorette party. And she wasn't just drunk and dancing. She was laughing, dress pulled aside, surrounded by men her friends had invited. And the worst part, her bridesmaids were cheering her on. Her best friend was filming. And Anna was smiling. That was the moment love died. But instead of anger, something colder filled me. Clarity. And from that moment forward, every move I made was for one purpose: revenge. I didn't confront her. Not that night, not the next morning, not even the week after. Confrontation would have given her power, the chance to cry, to twist the truth, to turn guilt into sympathy. No, she didn't deserve my rage. She deserved my silence. So I smiled. At breakfast, I poured her coffee the way I always did. 2 sugars, 1 cream. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said she couldn't wait for the wedding. I smiled back, my lips steady, while my chest burned like acid. Every night after that, I played the part. I laughed at her jokes. I asked about her day. I told her I was counting down the hours until I could call her my wife. On the outside, I was the picture of a devoted fiancé. On the inside, I was sharpening the blade of my silence. The first thing I did was secure myself. Quiet withdrawals from our accounts, new savings under my name only, assets shifted like puzzle pieces she didn't even know existed. I cut her out of every future she thought she had. Insurance policies, wills, joint investments. Her name vanished line by line. Next came the evidence. I made copies of everything. The videos, screenshots, bank records, even timestamps from the cloud. Multiple backups stored in multiple places. She thought her secrets were buried. I was already digging them up. But the key wasn't just collecting proof. It was patience, precision, making her believe I was still the fool she thought I was. I let her plan the wedding, pick the flowers, choose the venue. She twirled around the living room showing me invitations, and I clapped like a proud groom. All the while, the evidence grew thicker, the walls closing in tighter. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me differently, like she sensed something in my eyes, some crack in the mask. But then I'd laugh, pull her close, kiss her forehead, and she'd melt right back into her illusion. She believed she was untouchable. That belief was the rope tightening around her own neck. At night, lying next to her while she slept, I stared at the ceiling and thought about timing. Not just exposing her, but destroying her. Not with shouting or begging, but with silence so sharp it would carve her from the inside out. The question wasn't if I'd ruin her. It was how. And as I stared at her sleeping face, peaceful in her betrayal, I realized something chilling. She had no idea the wedding wasn't going to happen. Not the way she planned. Because by then I already knew. I wasn't going to say I do. I was going to say nothing at all. The plan had to be flawless. If I shouted, she'd cry. If I accused, she'd deny. But if I stayed silent, the truth itself would scream louder than I ever could. So I built the trap brick by brick. Step 1 was financial. Quiet transfers, accounts only I could touch. Every cent she thought was ours suddenly became mine. She didn't notice because betrayal blinds the betrayer. They think they're smarter, faster, always one step ahead. She never suspected that while she was rehearsing vows, I was rewriting the future. Step 2 was exposure. I took every video, every photo, every screenshot of her bachelorette celebration, and I turned them into a story. Her story. Organized, time-stamped, undeniable. A flash drive here, a backup there, copies mailed to myself under different names, cloud folders under fake accounts, even an envelope sealed and hidden at my brother's house. If I vanished tomorrow, the truth would still surface. Step 3 was silence. Silence is a weapon, sharper than any blade. I didn't let her feel the storm building. I let her believe everything was perfect. I let her walk through bridal shops, her eyes sparkling as she tried on gowns, not realizing each smile was another nail in her own coffin. At dinner, she leaned across the table, brushed her hand against mine, and whispered, "I can't wait to be your wife." I squeezed her hand, smiled back, and thought, "Neither can I, because you'll never get the chance." But the masterpiece of the trap wasn't money or even evidence. It was timing. The right reveal, at the right moment, in front of the right people. I didn't just want her to lose me. I wanted her to lose everything. Her friends, her family, her reputation, the future she thought she had. The wedding day was perfect for it. A room filled with witnesses. Every person who believed her lies gathered in one place. Every mask she wore stripped off in seconds. And as the plan crystallized in my mind, I felt something unexpected. Calm. Not rage, not despair, but clarity. She thought I was blind, but in truth, I had never seen more clearly in my life. The night before the wedding, I lay beside her, listening to her soft breathing, her hand draped over my chest like I was hers to keep. She whispered, half asleep, "Forever, okay?" I kissed her hair and said, "Forever." But forever was ending in less than 24 hours. The morning of the wedding felt surreal. Not because I was nervous, not because of love, but because of the silence inside me. She bustled around the house, hair pinned, makeup half done, phone buzzing non-stop with bridesmaids confirming details. To her, it was chaos wrapped in excitement. To me, it was the sound of a fuse burning down. I shaved, dressed slowly, deliberately, like a soldier preparing for battle. Every movement felt heavier with purpose. My phone buzzed. Messages from my best man, from family, from guests arriving. None of them knew I wouldn't be standing at that altar. None of them knew they weren't coming to a wedding. They were coming to an execution. By noon, the venue was alive. Flowers draped across archways, champagne bottles chilling in silver buckets, music rehearsed and waiting. Guests filled the pews, chattering, smiling, their phones snapping photos of the decorations. Her family was radiant. Her father shaking hands proudly, her mother glowing in a dress that sparkled under the lights. They thought today was the peak of their daughter's life. They didn't know it was the beginning of her downfall. Backstage, she was the picture of a bride. Dress pure white, veil like a halo, eyes bright with expectation. She laughed with her bridesmaids, adjusting her bouquet, checking her lipstick in the mirror. If guilt weighed on her, she hid it well. Maybe she thought the past was buried. Maybe she thought her secret would never surface. Maybe she thought I'd never leave. She was wrong on all counts. At precisely 2 p.m., when the ushers signaled the ceremony would begin, I disappeared. Not with hesitation, not with regret. I simply walked out the side door, got into my car, and drove away. Behind me, the whispers began. Where's the groom? Is he late? Did something happen? Back at the venue, panic started to ripple. Her bridesmaids whispered frantically, her father's face tightened, her mother clutched her pearls. She tried to stay calm, brushing it off with a nervous laugh. He'll be here. He wouldn't miss this. That's when the package arrived. A neatly sealed envelope delivered to the best man, with instructions to play the contents immediately if I failed to appear. Inside was the flash drive, and as the screen lit up in front of every guest, every family member, every friend, her world stopped. It wasn't me walking down the aisle. It was her, drunk, laughing, her dress pulled aside, her body given away like a prize on that night she swore was innocent. The room fell into silence, broken only by gasps and the scrape of chairs as people shifted uncomfortably. Her father's face went pale. Her mother's hands trembled, and her friends stared wide-eyed at the footage they never thought would see the light of day. And her? She froze, bouquet slipping from her fingers, her face draining of color as the truth she buried came screaming back to life in front of everyone. But that was just the beginning. The room erupted into chaos the moment the video ended. For a split second, there was silence, an almost sacred stillness where everyone sat frozen, unsure if what they had just witnessed was real. Then the murmurs began. Sharp whispers, gasps, the sound of people shifting in their seats as though trying to physically distance themselves from the shame unraveling before their eyes. Her mother pressed a trembling hand to her chest, whispering prayers under her breath. Her father stood, face red and trembling, not with confusion, but with rage. He turned toward her, his voice booming through the hushed crowd. "What have you done?" The words cut sharper than any blade, and she flinched as if struck. Her bridesmaids, they scattered instantly like rats when the lights come on. The ones who laughed with her that night, who cheered her on while filming the betrayal, suddenly wanted no part in it. One slipped out the back door, another buried her face in her hands. Not one of them moved to defend her. The guests, her colleagues, her extended family, our mutual friends, they didn't bother hiding their disgust. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered accusations. A few stood, already gathering their things to leave, as if staying in that room meant complicity. And there she stood, alone at the center of it all. Her perfect white dress looked like a mockery now. Her lips trembled as she stammered excuses. "It's fake. It's a setup. He's lying. This isn't real." But the footage was undeniable. Her face, her voice, her laugh. Every frame was truth carved into pixels. Her father's hand slammed against the table so hard the flowers shook. "Enough," he roared. "I vouched for you. I defended you. And this is how you repay us? How you repay him?" His voice cracked, not just with fury but with shame. Tears streaked her makeup, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. She turned to her bridesmaids, desperate for help, but they avoided her gaze. She turned to her mother, who only shook her head slowly, silently, as if mourning a daughter who no longer existed. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly, muttering something about ending the ceremony. Guests shuffled toward the exits, whispers chasing her like daggers. She reached for her father's arm, but he stepped back, his voice low and venomous. "Don't touch me." By the time the hall emptied, she was still standing there, bouquet wilted on the ground, veil twisted, shoulders shaking. The life she thought she controlled, the reputation she polished so carefully, was gone in under 10 minutes. And me? I was miles away, sitting in silence, watching the storm I had unleashed from a safe distance. Not with joy, not with regret, but with clarity. She had destroyed herself. I had simply given the truth an audience. But this was only the first wave. The real collapse was yet to come, because humiliation burns fast but consequences move slow, crushing everything in their path. The scandal didn't stop at the wedding hall. By the next morning, the whispers had turned into full-blown wildfire. Screenshots of the video circulated in private group chats. Blurred stills leaked onto social media. People who weren't even at the wedding suddenly had opinions, and the story took on a life of its own. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Friends, co-workers, distant cousins, all demanding answers she couldn't give. She tried to spin it, tried telling people it was fake, some cruel fabrication, but the voices on the footage, the tattoos, the unmistakable details, none of it could be denied. And denial only made her look more desperate. At work, the fallout hit hardest. She had built her career on being the reliable one, the face of professionalism. But whispers in office corridors spread faster than memos. By Monday morning, she was called into HR. They didn't yell, they didn't even accuse. They simply asked her to step down gracefully. Her resignation letter was already typed out and waiting for her signature. One scandal, and her entire professional image collapsed like a house of cards. Her friends didn't rally to her defense. In fact, they abandoned her even faster than her colleagues. The bridesmaids who had once cheered her on at that party, they cut contact entirely. Not out of guilt, but out of fear. They knew if they stood too close to her, the shame would rub off. So they blocked her number, deleted the group chat, and pretended they never knew her. At home, the silence was even worse. Her parents refused to answer her calls. Her father, the man who once praised me for being the son-in-law he'd always wanted, wouldn't even say her name. Her mother's voice cracked the one time she did pick up, whispering through tears. "Why, Anna? Why would you throw everything away?" Then the line went dead. She was left alone in an empty apartment, blinds drawn tight, curtains shut, drowning in her own isolation. Every knock at the door made her flinch. Every vibration of her phone sent panic racing through her chest. She didn't know if it was the police, her parents, or some stranger ready to shame her again. Meanwhile, I stayed silent. I didn't post anything. I didn't respond to her frantic messages. My silence was heavier than any words I could have thrown at her. And she felt it. Every unanswered call was another reminder that she no longer had control. That the one person she thought would always forgive her had vanished into the quiet. But silence wasn't the end of it. Silence was just the opening act. The evidence I had collected, the financial records, the hotel receipts, the private messages, they hadn't even seen daylight yet. And when they did, the collapse of her social life would look like nothing compared to what was coming. If public humiliation was the first blow, then financial collapse was the second, and this time it cut deeper. Anna had always prided herself on control. She was meticulous about appearances, the expensive handbags, the polished Instagram posts, the vacations staged like magazine spreads. But those things weren't hers. They were ours. Or rather, they were mine, because I made sure of it. Long before she realized the walls were closing in, I had quietly restructured everything. The joint accounts she thought were untouchable? Already drained. Credit cards frozen, balances moved. The apartment lease, the engagement deposits, even the savings her parents thought they'd gifted her for a fresh start, all shifted out of her reach, rerouted into accounts with only my name on them. At first, she didn't notice. Panic distracted her. But when she finally tried to access money, the truth hit like a bullet. Her login failed. Her cards declined. Her carefully curated lifestyle was exposed for what it had always been. Borrowed light, not her own flame. The calls began almost immediately. First to her parents. No answer. Then to her so-called friends. Straight to voicemail. Finally, to me. I didn't pick up, of course. Instead, I let her messages pile up, a gallery of desperation. You don't understand. I need help. Please, can we talk? I'll explain everything. I'm sorry. Okay? Isn't that what you wanted to hear? Each one weaker than the last. Each one a crack in the armor of the woman who once stood so proud, so confident, telling me I was her forever. But I wasn't done. I knew the right time to twist the knife wasn't when she was screaming, but when she was quiet, when she finally realized her strength was gone. So I prepared the final blow, the release of her double life into official channels. The detective, the same one who had warned me in the beginning, now had everything he needed. The bank records, the hotel receipts, the screenshots. They painted a picture not of a reckless mistake, but of a pattern. A character flaw so deep it could sink her reputation for good. When the authorities arrived, it wasn't with flashing lights or screaming neighbors. It was worse. A quiet knock, a firm voice, a summons delivered into her trembling hands. Not criminal charges, not yet, but legal inquiries that would bleed her dry. Subpoenas, financial audits, inquiries about unexplained transfers, the kind of paperwork that doesn't just scare you, it strangles you slowly. From her point of view, it must have felt like the walls themselves were alive, inching closer every day. She couldn't run to family, couldn't beg friends, couldn't lean on me. Everywhere she turned, doors closed, phones disconnected, eyes turned away. And that was the true justice. Not just exposing her lies, but stripping away the illusion of power she'd always clung to. But I wasn't finished. The real climax wasn't about her money, her job, or even her reputation. It was about the one thing she valued most: control. And soon she'd realize she never had it. The storm broke on a Friday night. I was sitting on the porch of my temporary apartment, sipping a drink in the dim glow of the streetlights, when the pounding started at my door. Heavy, desperate. The kind of knocking that carries panic in every thud. I didn't need to guess who it was. "Open the door!" Anna's voice cracked through the hallway, a mixture of rage and hysteria. "We need to talk. Now!" For a moment, I just listened. The shuffle of her heels on the floor, the ragged breath she tried to disguise as composure. I imagined her makeup smudged, her once perfect hair undone from hours of pacing and tears. Finally, I opened the door, not wide, just enough to see her face, and there it was. Defeat dressed as anger. Her eyes darted across my expression, searching for a crack, some hint of sympathy. "You did this?" she hissed, her voice shaking. "The money, the papers, everything. You think you can just ruin me?" I leaned against the doorframe, calm, steady. "Ruin you? No. You did that all by yourself." Her hands trembled as she held up one of the envelopes I'd sent. The divorce papers. My signature already dry at the bottom. "You can't do this," she spat. "You can't just walk away like I'm nothing." I tilted my head. "Can't I?" Her bravado cracked. Tears welled, slipping down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "Please," she whispered, the word foreign in her mouth. "We can fix this. I made mistakes, but I still love you." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictably hollow. "Love?" I said quietly. "Is that what you called it, when you gave yourself away at your bachelorette party? When you built your double life and thought I wouldn't notice?" Her knees buckled slightly, as if the truth weighed more than her body could hold. She tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out. For the first time, she wasn't in control. I stepped closer, lowering my voice until it was sharp enough to cut. "You thought I'd scream. You thought I'd beg. You thought I'd fight for scraps of your lies. But instead, I took away the one thing you've always relied on: my silence. And now that silence is the only answer you'll get." Her face twisted, torn between rage and desperation. "This isn't fair," she choked. "No," I agreed, pushing the door closed slowly. "It's justice." The last thing I saw before the door clicked shut was her expression. Shattered, hollow, a mirror of the empire she'd built out of deceit. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. Because while she thought the worst had already happened, the true collapse was still on its way. The first whisper didn't come from her. It came from her best friend, the same one who filmed that night, who laughed the loudest in the background of those grainy videos. Secrets only stay buried when everyone has the same stake in the silence, and Anna's friends were already turning on each other like starving wolves. By Sunday morning, the videos weren't just mine. They were everywhere. Someone leaked them to a group chat that spiraled across social media. Private at first, then not so private. And once the footage left her circle of bridesmaids, there was no pulling it back. I didn't have to lift a finger. I simply sat in my apartment sipping coffee, watching her perfect world rot in real time. Her phone must have been on fire. I imagined the notifications buzzing like angry hornets, each one a reminder that the image she had built, pure, loyal, respectable, was nothing but smoke. She didn't show up to work on Monday. She didn't answer calls from her parents. She didn't even try to message me anymore, because deep down, she knew exactly who had lit the fuse. The fallout spread fast. Her father called me, his voice breaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Tell me this isn't true," he begged. But when I stayed silent, the line went quiet, then cold. He didn't need my words. The proof already had him on his knees. Her mother, once so proud of her little girl, wept openly at the reception hall where the wedding should have been. People talked, neighbors, co-workers, even strangers on the internet. Anna's name became a punchline, a cautionary tale passed around with shaking heads and cheap laughter. And the bridesmaids? They scattered like shattered glass. Each one blamed the other for the leak. Friendships dissolved overnight, accusations flying across text threads that soon made their way online, too. The sisterhood she thought would shield her became the dagger that pierced her from every side. But the worst wasn't the public shame. It was the silence inside her own home. The silence of her family refusing to answer her calls. The silence of her friends ghosting her. The silence of me, her once loyal fiancé, nowhere to be found. One evening, through a mutual acquaintance, I heard she had tried to show up at her parents' house. They didn't even let her through the door. Her father's voice, usually warm and welcoming, boomed like thunder from behind the wood. "You've disgraced us enough. Leave." I pictured her standing there in the cold, clutching her phone like a lifeline that no longer connected her to anyone. Her empire of lies had crumbled into dust, and she was left choking on the ashes. But still, there was one more blow she didn't see coming, a final act that would seal her fate and leave her begging for the rest of her life. By the time I made my last move, Anna was already broken. But broken wasn't enough. She needed to understand, to feel the weight of everything she had gambled and lost. Only then would the silence I left behind carve deeper than any shouted argument ever could. The package arrived on a Thursday morning. Not anonymous this time, addressed in my handwriting so she couldn't pretend she didn't know. Inside, a single envelope. No photos, no videos, no dramatic evidence. Just one thin sheet of paper. Divorce papers, signed, sealed, filed. And beneath my signature, the words she once whispered to me in bed as if they were sacred. Forever. Except now, they were crossed out in thick, black ink. She called me, over and over. The first time, I let it ring. The second time, I picked up, but said nothing. I just listened. Her voice cracked, desperate, frantic. "Please, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but you don't have to destroy me." My chest tightened. Not with pity, but with power. For once, she was the one begging. I whispered 4 words before ending the call. "You ruined yourself, Anna. That was the last time we ever spoke." Within weeks, she lost everything. Her father cut her off financially. Her friends disowned her. The job she loved quietly terminated her contract, citing conduct violations, after the scandal bled into the workplace. Even the man she betrayed me with, the faceless stranger in the video, vanished, leaving her to carry the shame alone. Meanwhile, I walked away untouched. My accounts intact, my reputation unscathed, my future wide open. The man she thought would crawl back to her on his knees, didn't he just leave? He erased her. The beauty of it, I never had to raise my voice. I never had to scream, argue, or beg. I let the truth speak for itself. And truth is the sharpest weapon of all. Now, when people ask why I disappeared, I tell them the truth. I didn't vanish out of weakness. I vanished because it was the loudest punishment I could give. She wanted me on my knees. Instead, she's the one who will spend the rest of her life kneeling before the ruins of her own choices. And me? I don't feel rage anymore. No sadness, no longing. Only clarity. Justice doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it comes with silence. Calm, steady, and irreversible. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals who you truly are when the mask comes off. She showed me her lies. I showed her the cost. So let me ask you, what's the most satisfying revenge story you've ever heard? Share it in the comments, hit that like button if this story struck a nerve, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove silence can be the loudest justice of all.